And my intro throws the glasses off of my head. Okie pokey weirdos, I'm Rev, and I might be just a little bit of an Elvis fan. A bit. And when you talk about any person, any human, living or have once lived, there's gonna be some controversy in there because humans aren't perfect and everybody screws up sometimes. However, this guy did screw up a lot. So, I'm gonna give a quick little take on the controversy. If you don't want to hear about that, you can go to this timestamp and get straight into the costumes. Now, I would like to make a full video on this controversy one day, if I ever get the balls to post it, because I'm really worried about the backlash. So I will keep this one short and sweet. If you'd like to hear the long-form version, please let me know in the comments, because this short version is just to test the waters. That means plenty of info is going to be left out, because sadly that's how a summary works. For myself personally, with being an Elvis fan, I do heavily separate the art from the artist. EP himself even separated these two parts.
Well, the image is one thing, and a human being is another.
I'm a late 90s baby who grew up on Disney's Pop and Rock. My favorite songs from that series, at 3 years old, were Tutti Frutti, Little Richard, and Stuck on You, Elvis Presley. Then Lilo and Stitch came out in 2002. Absolutely love that movie and soundtrack. Game Plan came out in 2007, and all the while, reruns of Johnny Bravo and Full House helped keep Elvis on the brain for me. I even watched Jailhouse Rock in my 2nd grade music class and really enjoyed that movie. So I had a very Lilo style of thinking about this character. And yes, this is Elvis the character because I had no framework for who the actual person was behind all the glitz and glamour portrayed in the media I was consuming, excluding maybe Johnny Bravo and any other cartoon that portrayed him as the famous singer who got fat. Although that was through the lens of children's comedy, so the reality was still very blurred. Especially because he wasn't only dealing with what is a very common occurrence with gaining weight as you get older, but also serious bloating issues and allergic reactions to various medications and foods because his genetics were total crap. I grew up with a grandfather who likes Elvis well enough, and it's more that Elvis Presley's music reminds him of parts of his childhood that he enjoys. But I also grew up with a couple of parents who kind of feel like he's evil. So I can see both sides of the argument. I'm somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. I'm in that gray area where, yes, he was an amazing artist, comedian, performer, but then again, he did a number of naughty things, a lot of illegal things, and there should be consequences for those kinds of actions. But he was also extremely ridiculed and bullied for things he didn't have nearly as much control over. So we have to find the difference between the icon he became versus his very unsafe and detrimental behaviors off stage. Too many people put these situations into very black and white categories, while there are so many complicated and nuanced issues going on that none of us really know what was happening behind closed doors. Because we were not present for those occurrences. None of us can actually know for sure, but it is informative if we're getting stories told to us from those who were present. Story time! While working in retail, I told a woman I could not return her basket of items because she did not have the receipt, and all the items had been opened. Quick note, I was wearing Elvis guitar pick earrings that day. As soon as she noticed them, right after I told her we could not make the return, she started screaming at me about how he was evil, and in turn, it made me evil because I was wearing the earrings. She began throwing all of her items at me from her basket one by one, and yelling about how he always screamed at his wife and he threw chairs at her. Ahem. It took all of my strength to keep my mouth shut, but all I could think was, yeah, and what are you doing right now, lady? Pot? Kettle? If you're honestly that worried about the behaviors of a dead man who did all of these things over 50 years ago, you really need to work on being the change you want to see. And work on what is happening present day so that things like what you are complaining about don't happen again. In the wise words of old Rafiki,
oh yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. Ah, you see?
However, no matter which way you swing it, the persona of Elvis Presley is extremely iconic. Iconic meaning a creation that can outlive the creator in the public eye, which he very much has, because we still have so many references of his work within our media today. The way I look at it, his story gives us a very detailed and interesting character to study. He seriously struggled with mental and physical illness, proving to us how far science has come and also how far medicine still has to go, and how important it is for us to ask for help. He also shows us a perfect roadmap of what not to do if you don't want to work yourself to literal death. But he also shows us the strength that comes from being unapologetically yourself. I love and appreciate his work because it inspires me to be myself and not care about what others think, while also proving there are so many ways to be a better person in this world, and it really helps in the long run to choose a healthier path. So, let's get rolling on these costumes. And, welcome to my world of cosplay shenaniganery. I'm gonna go in chronological order, so we're gonna start in 56 and go all the way through to 77. This video might have to be in 2 parts. There's a lot to go through. I'm starting with his easily recognized outfit from the 1956 album cover. This would be his pink suit, otherwise known as the squirrel pants. During this time, between 55 and 56, he very commonly wore oversized suits, often pink because the pink and black color combination was his favorite at the time. And the creators of the Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie were the ones who coined these pants, the squirrel pants, so I will be referencing a lot of that movie during the early years of his career where it wasn't as well documented in original photos, so this movie definitely helps in reference to what he was wearing at the time. And the costume designer for that movie is Catherine Martin, but we'll get to another costume designer for that movie who didn't get nearly as much credit as she really should have. One of the main references that helped me create this video is this book. So, I will put up as many references as I can on screen or in the description, mentioning where I got all of my information from. These very boxy, oversized suits came from the tailors of Beale Street. This style of suit was more commonly seen in black culture at the time, and Elvis really enjoyed that style, so that was his personal preference, so that's what he chose to wear. I will be referencing a lot of the clothing that he wore more as a daily wear as well, because we're all born naked and the rest is just drag. There were also his lace shirts. In the movie we see the black one as well as the pink one. The black one I was able to find more easily through pictures, but also because during a dinner and movie night he wore that shirt and a lot of pictures were taken on July 15th of 56. Even though the pink one is a little harder to find, it was a really light pastel pink and it looks white in most of the pictures. I think they made the shirt darker in the movie so that it would be more easily filmed. The largest majority of any pictures I could find of him originally wearing this shirt was from the 56 Jacksonville concert. There was the pink satin jacket where it was the first time that we saw him photographed with a policeman hat. It made me a little sad that in the movie this jacket was more of a wool texture, even though originally it was a satin jacket. And Presley definitely had a preference to silk and satin because they were more comfortable for him to wear since he was performing and sweating a lot, as well as he had a lot of various skin irritations, so it was a lot more comfortable for him to wear silk and satin over that agitated skin. We have him in that pink suit when he sang Hound Dog on TV for the first time. I found it interesting that the movie did make the white checkerboard lines more visible, but for the original coat there was a very, very minor difference between the lines and the base color of the coats. So it's actually really hard to see that detail, especially on 50s television. Then there's his blue patterned button shirt from the recording studio. When he sang Hound Dog on the Ellen Show, he was forced into coattails and was completely embarrassed by being given an actual hound dog to sing to without being notified that this was going to happen. I really enjoyed that in the movie they had him announce that if he had known, he could have made it funny. Because he was very much a comedian. And he definitely would have been able to work with this if he'd been told ahead of time. In 56, we also had Rustwood Park. This is his famous can't wiggle a finger reference. Absolutely love it.
The police came out and they filmed the show. So I couldn't move. I had to stand still. The only thing I moved was my little finger like that.
A classy all-black look, except for a bright red tie. Then we had the Tupelo concert, also in 56, and he's wearing a black velvet shirt that was gifted to him by Natalie Wood, his girlfriend at the time, and her tailor was the one who made that for him. I did try to look up the tailor's name, could not find it to save my life, and I wanted to share this photo of these three kids because it cracks me up. The boys on either side both have the biggest, cheesiest grins on the face of the planet, and the girl is sitting in the middle going, "Oh Lord, help me, get me out of here." His pink and black striped shirt. Again, we have the movie making the material for the jacket different than what the original was. His mom passed in 58, and when they were doing press for this, he was photographed wearing a pastel yellow shirt covered in these giant ruffles. I'm very sad that the movie made the ruffles so much smaller because in the late 50s, these giant ruffles were super common. But after seeing an interview with Catherine Martin, I did hear her talk about romanticizing what originally was there because that's how people are going to remember it, with more of a label of perfection rather than the imperfections that were actually there. So she made these costumes more based on what would work for the modern beauty standards, mixing that with what was originally there. Throughout all of these photos, you can see him wearing white shoes. Most of the time in all the photos, they're the same shoes. So let me show you what these shoes look like now, because I did photograph them while I was at the museum. If you get a good look at them, you'll see that the left shoe is a lot more beat up than the right. And the reason for this is that his left foot was a tap, 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 tapping all the time, which meant that shoe took more creases in it from the toes bending and his foot flexing. And the main reason for him doing that with that leg was so that he could dance without hurting that leg more, because he actually had a lot of hip and knee joint issues going on his left side, and they only got worse as he got older, especially with how much he was dancing and how much weight he was putting on that side of his body. And I know I'm zooming through time a little bit because we're still technically in 58, but it's really hard to find footage of him tapping his foot like this anytime before 69 because they were insisting on filming him from the belly button up until that point because, you know, the gyrations were so vulgar and disgusting. And since we're already here with this topic, I'm going to go ahead and continue with some of the footage from the Aloha concert, because he had multiple physical issues going on with his body. Of course, he had his heart, lungs, and stomach, which were very commonly known, but this book also mentions that it's possible he had excessive muscle tension. Now, I personally deal with an extreme case of this. No doctor has ever seen anything as bad as I have in anyone as young as I am. So watching him struggle with his knees and hips going up and down, and as well as shifting the weight of his body throughout the Aloha concert, I'm sitting there going, yeah, feel that too, buddy. Yep. And I know plenty of people are going to be asking, how the heck can you move that much if you have excessive muscle tension? But in my personal experience, movement is what helps get that to loosen up as much as possible. So all of this movement likely helped him keep the muscle tension at bay. So the deterioration of that left shoe is a very good example of the deterioration of his joints and muscles and whole body over the course of the years. And now we are into his movie era. 31 movies to be exact, and this much content would require a whole video on its own if I felt it was worth it, but this went from 56 to 69, and it was largely romantic movies. So let's blaze through these, because most of his costumes for this were not super exciting. First movie was 56, and it was Love Me Tender. In this movie, he was a cowboy, and you'll see a theme here with a lot of his movies. He is either wearing very basic, modern clothing for the time, or he's a cowboy. While also taking every chance they could to get this guy shirtless, often with swimsuit scenes. Also, I want to say that I miss when this constituted as ripped, as compared to the Captain America physique that is expected of our Hollywood actors now, and it's a very difficult figure to attain for any normie when it's not their job to be absolutely jacked. I mean, I'm not picky about gender in this case, so any way you slice it, I would prefer my actual partner not to be able to crush me with one hand, just as a personal preference. Give me Bridges on the OG Tron, or Ford as Indiana Jones, where we have a very healthy, muscular build without going full berserker mode. I simply would love to see more representation of healthy, more obtainable body goals in our content these days. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Now back to Love Me Tender. It has a very pitiful death scene. I feel like this was a director's issue. Moving on! But the cowboy costume I was able to photograph while I was at the museum, it didn't have a whole lot of wear and tear to it. There wasn't a whole lot of weathering going on, but the belt was severely beat up, and I was trying to figure out if they did that on purpose, even though the rest of the costume was not really weathered, or if he was just that rough on his belt. 57, we also have my personal favorite movie of his, Jailhouse Rock. I do have a personal preference to black and white, so that's a huge reason why. Including that the second half of this movie has enough doggies running around on set to keep me glued to the screen. I really want this blue sweater. And that this movie acts as a warning for those who do not realize that with great fame comes great power and great responsibility. And even though he was the main character for this movie, he still seriously struggled with his own fame. Also in 57, we get the gold Lamé suit. He wore this to the International Amphitheater in Chicago, and there's a story behind this one. Elvis and Parker commissioned Nudie to make this suit for him. And if you're wondering who Nudie is, he's more so known now for making cowboy versions of what Elvis's jumpsuits were back in the day. You can see these suits on people like Post Malone, Dolly Parton. Back to the gold suit. When they commissioned him to make a gold leaf suit for EP, Nudie decided to make a Lamé styled suit. Lamé is a practice where you're wrapping gold material around the yarn threads of each individual thread for the fabric. This technique was more commonly used in the 50s for evening wear or for costumes. Elvis first wore this whole suit for a photo shoot, which we commonly see on a lot of the Christmas albums now, and then wore the whole thing for that theater performance. However, he did find the pants uncomfortable. There is some debate on what made them uncomfortable. Maybe they were too tight, maybe they were itchy. The Lamé would make it a little more rough of a fabric. Although my understanding of it, especially after reading this book, explaining a lot of his mental and physical health issues, I believe it was because the material was uncomfortable for him. He did go down on his knees for Hound Dog a lot, so that material roughing up on your knees every time you go down would be unpleasant. And to my understanding, he last wore the jacket in 61, but he mostly only wore the jacket after his first couple of times of wearing the whole suit. Another reason why I think it was probably the material roughing up against his skin, because he could more easily wear a shirt underneath the jacket. In 1960, we get GI Blues, another one of the movies I do enjoy. Except for this little thing that bothers me. How the heck is an American soldier who keeps insisting he cannot speak German singing German with these little kids all of a sudden? Also, when was this ever attractive? No, that's creepy. Put your finger away. And this is a good segue to bring in his army fatigues.
I was in tanks for a long time, you see. And, they rock and roll quite a bit.
He was in the army from 58 to 60, and when I took pictures of all of his uniforms, or pieces of, they weren't really worn a whole lot. Most of the pieces still look pretty fresh, new, clean. He might have lived in them, but not really lived in them. It was only 2 years, and a lot of his jumpsuits have more wear and tear on them than these outfits do. The only roughing up I noticed on these pieces was right around the patches, around the collar, and the knees of his pants. Dude needs to get off his knees! The wool winter coat was the item that I saw the most roughing up of out of all of these pieces. And I feel like that's probably because he wore it the most, and even in more daily wear, this was something he'd probably be wearing. And this suit has a lot of piling going on, some little bitty holes, things like that. 61, we got Blue Hawaii, another one of my personally preferred Elvis movies because it has Angela Lansbury in it. In 62, we have Kid Galahad and Follow That Dream. Kid Galahad, I was able to take pictures of the robe from that. Hardly any wear or tear on this. They hardly touched it at all. And then the other outfits continue to be very basic button-up shirts and dress pants. I did get a picture of the leather jacket with the fur trim. This jacket really didn't seem to have seen a lot of action. I was looking for spots on it where it was dried out because it is real leather, and eventually that leather does start giving out. But they have done either really good upkeep on it or this thing was hardly touched. 64, Viva Las Vegas! Lots of suit jackets, not a whole lot else to say on those costumes aside from his black outfit for the ending performance of the movie. Because while my brother and I were watching this movie together, we both noticed at the same time that we think they made those pants to make sure that he could not move as much as he's used to moving. Because these pants are extremely tight on him. We were looking at how they were hugging his hips and like digging into his hips to keep him from moving side to side and having that gyration he's known for having. The pants also did not fit his butt at all because of how it was digging into his hips, continuing to restrain the motion. Which I don't know why you would do that when you have Elvis Presley in your movie. It's like having a really good comedian and then not letting them improv. Then I got pictures of this velvet jacket as well as this blue jacket. The velvet jacket looked in pretty good condition. I did see a little wear on it around the collar because of taking it off, putting it back on, all of the motion that it gets from being in this area. So that one was actually worn some. But I did want to nitpick on this blue jacket because I'm looking at the hem right next to the buttons and there is so much puckering, and this is not from age. This would have happened when the costume was being sewn, so it was probably a very low budget, rushed order of getting this jacket done because there is so much puckering around the collar and the buttons, showing that this material was not made to be used that way and they forced it through the machine. Ooh, and now I have a costume change, because we have gotten to 1968. We finally have some more interesting costumes and a lot more going on, also more documentation and behind the scenes stories of these outfits. It is the 1968 comeback.
If you're looking for trouble.
The costume designer for this show is Belew, but we will get to more on him in a little bit. Let's get to the intro outfit. For the intro of the show, he wears a nearly all-black outfit aside from the red ascot. I did get to photograph this one at the museum. I paid special attention to the shoes to see if they were replica shoes or if they were the ones he wore. Normally I'm able to tell based on how creased the left shoe is. These shoes for the intro outfit were more evenly creased, but he obviously did wear them. And the setup they have for the 68 comeback outfits are the first outfits you get to see as you're walking through, if you go in what is considered the correct order. And it gives you more of a sense of how tall this guy was. Because I'm only 5 feet tall, so a 6 foot tall person seems quite tall to me. But also, my 5 foot tall was more commonly closely the height that people were expected to be back then. Meaning that he was quite a bit taller than most people. He also had a lot more muscle on him. He was just very built as compared to a lot of the string beans that were around. So you get the sense that he was quite a large human for the time. Next I took pictures of the black velvet suit from the show. Don't you hate when all of the lights reflect off the glass at museums, especially on black items, and you can't get a frickin' picture? I found it interesting that the piping around the collar and buttons are leather, which meant that it wasn't a very friendly fabric, and there is some puckering in the stitching around, but that's kind of hard to avoid with the type of fabric that was being used. And you might recognize the jacket from something that was not in this show, because Elvis Presley was known for being a serial costume rewearer. I actually greatly appreciate that. Don't waste the things you have people spend so much time on to make for you or you make for yourself. Wear them multiple times. Please, we are not wasting time, money, effort. Please, one of my pet peeves. So we do see him wearing this jacket when he meets Nixon. Politics aside, let's keep rolling with the costumes. I took pictures of his red suit from the show, but they have it really high up on those fake stairs. And I can't get any good pictures of it, made me sad. But there's the red suit, whatever pictures I got of it. And I wish I could remember which outfit it was for the 68 comeback. I cannot find this audio to figure out which one, but I listened to an audio recording of them practicing for the 68 comeback. It was something like a dress rehearsal. And I heard Elvis yell something to the effect of, "Alright, stop. Okay, we need to get this tailored because these pants don't fit my ass." I so wish I could find that audio. It made me laugh so hard. One of these suits, one of these outfits were not quite tailored properly, and he could not move the way he wanted to, so they had to readjust the fit. Finally, the big, classic, memorable outfit from this show, the leather suit. The leather suit was inspired by a Levi's denim outfit. However, Elvis was not a huge fan of jeans or denim because he grew up in them his whole childhood because his family didn't have money. That's what you wore when you were poor when he was a kid. So he much preferred to wear other materials. Even in the show you see him wearing jeans. They're actually made of canvas. And it just looked enough like denim on 68 television that they could get away with it. Also, all of these outfits were given the really high collar. This was not initially EP's choice. Bill Belew chose to go with the super high collars in reference to the Napoleon collars. He simply liked the geometric shapes it gives the face when the collar is up higher. It frames the face very nicely. But then EP really took to that style, and through a lot of research, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find all the references that I have for this, but you can normally find some of this information in interviews with people from his childhood, because they talk about him having a lot of acne on the back of his neck. It wasn't normally his face. The back of his neck was actually really oily, and he had some trouble with skin irritation back there. So he was super self-conscious of his neck. Normally in interviews he would say that he wore the high collars because he was self-conscious about how skinny he felt like his neck was as well. But this was also why he would wear a lot of scarves. Bill Belew included scarves in the outfits because so many of the outfits were solid colors, and then the scarves would help accent that somehow, change things up a little bit. But these scarves also helped soak up a lot of that oil that was on the back of his neck, especially when he was sweating like crazy and performing, while also helping cover up any kind of skin irritation that was going on back there. There is the story that his suit had to be cut off of him, and it did, but only for the second show. By the second show, he had sweated so much that his skin expanded and swelled inside the suit, which meant they had to cut it away from him. Cutting the seams, essentially they seam ripped it off of him so that they could just seam it right back together as soon as they got it off of him. Bill was known to have said that he felt like the movies never really did Elvis justice. He wanted to make these outfits for the 68 comeback, trying to further express the masculinity of this man. Bill didn't want to use rhinestones and sparkles and everything that was kind of common in the fashion at the time, because he wanted to focus on masculinity. Muscles, man. Man. Because, and it's not only Bill quoted having said this, but Elvis Presley had some sort of a presence. There was this aura that wafted off of him that got everyone's attention. And sometimes you can't get that through a screen, so it's kind of cool that we have this documentation of so many people saying that he simply has this presence when he walks into a room. It's not even that he was famous, but that the energy he carried was something that was attractive. So let's go over my own pictures of the suit. I was trying to get as detailed of pictures as I could for this outfit because I really want to recreate it. Maybe in a different color leather though. I'm still playing with the ideas. Something that I was focusing really heavily on were the pants while I was taking photos, because the jacket itself is actually really well documented and the measurements are even available. There's also sewing patterns of it, making that a lot easier to make than what we have going on with the pants. There's that front seam. I was trying so hard to get an image of the crotch. Oh boy, the fun of costume making. Because there is this curved line to make it fit better around his hips, right around at the crotch. I got somewhat of an image there, but I was really trying to focus on the tailoring of the pants so I could see how Bill made it fit EP's body, because EP back then especially had almost an hourglass figure. He had a serious curve to his hips and bottom, but a wider chest up at the top and then a very thin waist. Since I have a very extreme hourglass figure, it would make it a lot easier for me to know how to tailor it for myself if I'm referencing the original source. I also know that Catherine did not enjoy how short the pants were cut because you could see EP's socks while he was performing, so she did make Austin Butler's pant legs a little bit longer to cover the socks. While I also know that Bill made the pant legs shorter for Elvis's wearing of the suit because he did not want him tripping up over the hem of the pant leg during the performances. Something else that came up with me really focusing on the tailoring, having a laser focus on this, was the behind. The funny thing is, I found that a lot of the mannequins do not have enough butt to fill out the pants that they are wearing. They likely had to make the mannequin bottoms a little bit smaller than what was originally the human's body shape, because it's a lot easier to get pants up and over a solid figure when there's a little more wiggle room. A human body would squish, allowing you to get the pants up and over. Not a mannequin. I wish there was not so much of a light glare on this glass, because I was trying to get the tailoring of the back of these pants. Something I did notice though that helped accent the shape and make it fit him better was the top of the pants had a bit of a V down towards the crack, so that the butt would curve a little more like a heart shape and give that curvature to the back of the pants, better fitting the body. I also personally got to hold one of his boots from this outfit. The poor thing was falling apart. It's so beat up. I feel so sorry for this little boot. Moving on to the white suit from the '68 comeback. Because EP wore so much black during the show of the '68 comeback, Bill felt it would be an amazing contrast if he put him in white for the ending. And the neckerchief for this outfit has a little story behind it, because Bill couldn't decide what color of neck accent to give EP while they were actually filming dress rehearsals. And finally, last minute, Bill managed to find this dark red wine-colored neckerchief. And when he put the scarf on EP, he told him that this was going to be in honor of all the boys who were losing their lives in Vietnam because the scarf was the color of their blood. This concept had very little to do with politics, and it was so much more about how many lives were lost. It was about honoring those who weren't around anymore, especially since the song was If I Could Dream, even though he was supposed to be singing Christmas songs. In this way, he got to honor so many lives that were lost. This was also a suit I took a lot of pictures of because I could get almost all the way around this thing, and I am fascinated by the tailoring on a lot of these two-piece suits for him. The left shoe on this outfit, you can definitely see a lot more creasing. He tapped that foot a lot more, obviously. I also found it interesting how little this outfit has yellowed, considering there have been other outfits from similar years that were all white and have yellowed a lot more, but it's also based upon how well these costumes are taken care of over the years, and obviously Elvis Presley Enterprises takes very good care of their costumes. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of yellowing because it was a white outfit and that's what happens over time, but it still looks pretty dang white for being decades later. I even took images of the coattails because I like how the coattails are slit in 3 spots instead of just down the middle to make it fit him better as well as move with him better. I even found a loose thread on the costume. I love finding these little details on these costumes where something's falling apart or has been restitched. This one, it's the right pocket, and there's a little loose thread hanging from the pocket. I'm not sure if the pockets are real. I would think they would be, considering this was '68 and they weren't constantly making fake pockets. So I'm wondering if one of his rings got caught on the pocket when he put his hand in his pockets at some point. It's also possible that it could have gotten damaged while in transportation or being put on or taken off of a mannequin, although it's a lot more likely that it was damaged while he was wearing it because they are so careful with transporting these things now. The same concept goes towards a little bitty hole that I found on the left knee. Yeah, the left knee. Also looks something like his ring got caught on the pants at some point. Again, possible, could have been transport and movement years after the show had happened. Although I feel it is a lot more likely that his pant leg got caught on something while he was filming in this outfit. With the '68 comeback done and over with, and the '70s jumpsuits coming in next, let's talk a little bit about Bill Belew. Story time! Reading directly out of the book for this one. Oh, I put a bookmark in there and it still doesn't want to open. Come on. Throughout his 50-year career, Bill Belew designed costumes for many stars, including Ella Fitzgerald, The Band, Gladys Knight, Brooke Shields, and Gloria Estefan. However, it is his work with Elvis for which he is best known. With his jumpsuit design, Bill literally changed rock and roll fashion. Bill did not work alone. It was a collaboration between Bill and Gene Doucette to design, stud, and even embroider many of Elvis's stage outfits. Doucette? I think it's just Doucette. How do you spell your name, Gene? Pronunciation.
The scientists and engineers.
Oh, look, an ad.
We are looking at how to pronounce this name as well as how to say more. This is a French name. Originally in France it is said as Doucette.
Doucette. I was close. Okay, let's try that again. Bill, who was a graduate of the Parsons School of Design, partnered with Gene, a self-taught artist, as his workload grew in the early 70s. Recognizing Gene's talent, Bill turned over some of Elvis's jumpsuit design projects to him in '72. Gene worked on many of Elvis's suits, including American Eagle, the Aztec Sun, and the Tiger jumpsuit, just to name a few. And Bill is quoted saying, "Bob Mackie had Cher, and I had Elvis Presley." So while in the book, Bill is credited for the design of every single suit in here, Gene was a huge part of most of these suits once we hit about '72. And as a costume designer myself, I was absolutely drooling over these handmade sketches Bill did himself, walking down the hallways of the museum, seeing every single little sketchy bit and piece that Bill came up with. Some things not even fully coming into fruition, some things being added to suits that were already being planned. It was just so cool to look at. And I have now reached 1969 in Vegas, which means I got a costume change again and a backdrop change, because we're getting into the 70s.